angel investor. I'm a member of Sandhill Angels. We do about 30 to 40 deals a year. Average deal size is between 100 and 200K, so early stage investors, about 100 members. And you can just apply right at sandhillangels.com. By day, I'm a corporate technology scout. I do long-term assignments with specific corporates, and right now I'm engaged in the automotive and consumer space for that.
Hi everybody, Sébastien, I'm French, working for Renault Nissan Mitsubishi lab here in the Silicon Valley in charge of what's called business innovation. So basically, what are the new value streams that are produced with new technologies, typically blockchain.
My name is Alan Gordon. I work for Ford Motor Company at their Research and Innovation Center, literally a half mile away. So I'm the blockchain lead there, right? So we're running a project, think of it as Carfax without Carfax, right? So it's peer-to-peer vehicle history data. And I'm also involved with I'll call it a nascent consortium, right, of automakers here in the Valley, along with my colleague Sebastian here, right? Friends from that. So,
hi, my name is Song Ding. I'm an investor with Comcast Ventures. We are the independent venture arm for Comcast NBC Universal, and we're headquartered out here in San Francisco. I focus on a broad range of technologies, everything from consumer tech and services to more emerging technologies, and have helped lead our investments in autonomous mobility, looking at blockchain applications in media, particularly rights management.
Hi everyone, my name is Ashish. I'm an investor with Robotics. We are a $100 million fund, primarily investing in early stage companies in robotics, hardware, frontier technologies, and consumer. We are very excited about what's happening with a lot of these new technologies and trying to understand where the opportunities are in that particular space. We invest globally outside of China. Looking forward to meet with everyone in the Board fund.
And last but not least,
I'm sorry to do that. My name is Yoshi Tanaka for SoftBank. I'm on business side, not investment side. But sometimes big three strategic peers focus on AI, IOT, robot, and the blockchain, and the currency is rather fundamental technology to support these core strategies.
great. Thank you so much. So I think today our goal is to kind of have a freewheeling and kind of free-flowing discussion. But I want to kick it off by asking kind of each of our panelists to address what they think is the biggest opportunity in this space and the biggest challenge. But because we have such a kind of diverse range of topics, and I feel like people have different areas of expertise. So if you want to if you want to talk about any specific area or all of them together, let us know if you are addressing IoT or robotics or self-driving cars or whichever area that you want. And I'll start over here with Yoshi.
Okay, first of all, it's a very hard question. I will touch upon first of all IoT and blockchain. Bitcoin is core technology of blockchain, but what about IoT is a centralized system, and on the other, blockchain is a decentralized system. And what about the M2M micropayment? Blockchain that takes a little bit long time to for transaction. Transaction fee is rather high in terms of IoT small data collection. So in order to solve this problem, the community, blockchain community are struggling about smart contract, smart IoT, apart from cryptocurrency. We have a consortium among SoftBank and Spring and the Far Eastern networks in Taiwanese carriers for transmissions, overseas transmissions. For example, unbanked people, a lot of unbanked people in India and the Philippines and the other Asian countries. International managed transmission is very critical. We are making efforts for this area. sorry, so this is apart from IoT. Yeah, and another small effort is donation. Donation is somebody will donate this small amount of money, and the Red Cross, and second Red Cross, third Red Cross, a lot of intermediate transaction players in between. Eventually, so a small amount of money to the final refugees. To solve this problem, so we are trying to make a donation through blockchain. And IoT, so certification, very legit systems. We are certified instantly and the payment instantly. So we are trying, but still studying. So we are trying it in the very near future.
So I'm not the blockchain expert at Orange Silicon Valley, but I lead the connected vehicle and I look at blockchain within the connected vehicle space. What Orange as a group, we have a vested interest in blockchain. We invested in a blockchain company called Chain, and we also have an Orange bank that we launched last year. That's a digital bank in France. So on the fintech side, the interest in blockchain is apparent. But on the connected vehicle, which is essentially also an IoT device, probably the largest IoT device that someone would own, the blockchain is not apparent. I look at cybersecurity. So using blockchain within a car as a cybersecurity to authenticate messages that run within the car communications, and that to avoid having a hack through one of the sensors or one of the systems in the car, and then send false messages within the car. And that's very important when we look at an autonomous future where humans drive less and less and the systems drive more and more. Another big opportunity I see is, and probably our colleagues will talk about it later, is in the media rights and media distribution for telcos is very important. Many telcos around the world have acquired or are media aggregators, and the less and less driving humans will do, the more and more content consumption people will do during their time in the car. So how do we distribute the media and the digital media rights among the vehicles? That's a key focus for us also.
Okay, well, for me, when I scout for I'm a tech scout for Bissell and Forcia. Bissell is a consumer company. They make all those vacuum robots. And Forcia is a tier 1 supplier in automotive. And I think for blockchain, the really interesting opportunity here is in the supply chain. When you build when you build a car, you go all the way down to tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5 suppliers. It's a very complex task of sourcing the materials and then billing and passing on profits and et cetera, et cetera. So negotiating contracts. And I think from a tech scout perspective, I'm really excited about all the opportunities with interesting startups that make that process more efficient and could probably eliminate a lot of the activities that happen, all these inefficient activities in accounts payable, receivable, legal. The biggest challenge with that, I get excited as a tech scout, but the supply chain people tend to not be the most exciting or focused on advanced technology type of personnel, right? They're kind of like put in the basement somewhere. They're not given a lot of funding, not a lot of money to experiment and try new things. It's basically a cost center for most companies, and that's really the hardest part, I think, to break through. as an entrepreneur and say, hey, you want to do something differently? Yeah, slightly more risk with us, but it's going to save you a ton of money. Supply chain guys really are, the people that administer the supply chain are really not as interested in saving money in that way. So as a tech scout, that's a challenge for me, right? I find interesting startups that can create a new product feature for companies that where they sell their products. Everybody loves that. Everybody comes along and wants to take the risk and make that happen. I have not been as successful getting supply chain people in the various companies I scout for interested. On the angel investing side, the thing I'm most intrigued with right now, I love this, a lot of these ledgers, right, are out in public, and there's some interesting startups that are looking at these ledgers and saying, hey, I know it's anonymous data, but what data can I tease out of that ledger and create analyses for? And I think there's a ton of opportunity there. And it goes back to, I've been through a couple of .com booms around here, and it goes back to, I want to back a startup that sells maybe the tools to the people that are going in and trying to create all this opportunity instead of making very specific bets. And so I like these ledger analysis type of opportunities right now.
I'm going to give a kind of high-level answer as to how to define the mindset of what we have, the mindset we have at Robotics. So we see blockchain or DLTs, whatever, have different. It's a new asset class with different sub-assets. So you have the currencies. So then those are quite complicated. It's more storage of value. You can do an anonymous transfer. It's not an interest to build a currency. Then we have protocols, typically Ethereum, other big machines that run utility tokens, the third one. And the final one is non-fungible assets like collectibles, whatever you want. It's kind of like the drawer we put everything in. What we're interested in the first place is utility tokens and how these can be vessels for new services that will allow us to make more money, saving costs or monetize. Because saving costs, typically we have the supply chain example. If we can use a DLT on our supply chain, we can probably have a lot of cost savings. I know it's a hard fight between value creation and value protection, especially in the OEMs, especially in supply chain, but we're working on that. And on the other hand, of utility tokens, you have everything that relates to micro-monetization schemes. An example I was given is the new air miles, for example. We can the beauty of the blockchain is when you tokenize an experience, you can give air miles. Okay, we have miles in our card and everything. What's really interesting is because it's a decentralized and open network, it's really easy for external partners to come in and be part of it. And you can have something that you earn points on using your car, making the maintenance at the right place, charging it the right way. And ultimately, you should be able to use these points not only within the Renault or Nissan ecosystem, but everywhere else to all the partners. See it as the Safeway points where you can just go to Chevron and get 20 cents. But that's the beauty of decentralization. Biggest challenge is how do we move from this finding microservices, making something nice with the utility tokens to owning the platform. And I want to say what's very interesting is the car is the biggest IoT machine. It's very powerful, and it could be a huge vessel for being a component of a platform, a protocol token owned by one or maybe multiple OEMs.
Yeah, and I'm going to give a here to what Sebastian just said, right? I mean, I see the opportunity really as peer-to-peer marketplaces, right? And I told you a little bit about my project, right? It was Carfax without Carfax, right? But I saw that almost as a Trojan horse, right? That once you get an identity for the vehicle on the blockchain and then eventually a wallet, right, associated with the vehicle, there are all kinds of things that you can do, right? And to me, that's the real opportunity. And that was really driven home when I was working on this project, because I went out and talked to a car dealer, right? Because we were talking about, in effect, replacing Carfax. And we got into a conversation about TrueCar. And I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with TrueCar, but the one thing he said to me was look, I'm the one with all the capital expenditure here, right? I've got to, buy and maintain this store. I've got to buy all of these cars. I got to pay all of these people. I've got to, keep all of these lights running or what have you. And here is this intermediary inserting themselves between me and my customers, right? Bad mouthing, right, me to the customers, telling me what I can charge, right, for my product, and then extracting value out of the value chain, right? And I think that's sort of almost like throughout the industry, right, the auto industry, there's a lot of that goes on, right? So I think blockchain has the, and DLT is really, I want to say blockchain, right, has the potential to create peer-to-peer marketplaces where the people who are really creating the value, right, and have the sort of capital investment can work directly with their customers, right? I think that's the opportunity. The biggest challenge is that, the technology isn't there yet, right? I mean, in terms of, there's still a long way to go, right? Whether you're talking about scalability, cost, on and on, right? There's still a ways to go before I think the DLT technologies out there can support the sort of scale that we're talking about. But there's a lot of work going on, right? So there's going to be an issue of timing, right? Of getting the timing right to where you've got something ready when the technology is ready. But I think there's a great opportunity here.
What I'm most excited about is how this technology could disrupt media and content creation and distribution. So if you think about the current processes, it's completely broken, right? The creators of the content, the people who are part of the process of generating, whether it's audio, video, visual, are not being compensated and are not being, the value that they're bringing is not being properly attributed. And so, there's a lot of interesting things happening in this idea of can creators assign, rights from the moment the content is created, track it perfectly through all its distribution, and potentially even on top of that, reward and incentivize individuals who share and discover this content. So there's potentially even social communities that could be built on top of content creation, content distribution. And so that's very interesting to me as a venture investor, but also you can see a lot of the opportunities that could result from Comcast, NBC Universal as well. The biggest challenge with any new media discovery platform is how does the content originate? So you see there's a lot of very kind of forward-thinking creators who are pioneering some very original content that's being built and created to be distributed through a blockchain platform or blockchain-powered infrastructure. But that's not the majority of the content that is being created. And so you kind of have the typical chicken and egg problem with content and platform, which is to get eyeballs and to get engagement on a given platform, whether that's content or social, you have to have the allure and the attraction, and that I think is the issue that a lot of these companies working in this category are struggling with.
Personally, I mean, I'm very excited about kind of like the international remittance business, because there is if you look at the entire market, there's hundreds of billions of dollars worth of market where somebody is trying to send money back home for food and medicine and for education of their family, and they have to pay like 10, 15, or 20% of that amount. If you're sending $1, let's say, to somewhere in Africa, Western Union would charge you like 15 to 20% just to provide you that layer of trust and kind of like give you that thing like, hey, I'm going to make sure that the money reaches your family from that perspective. And I think this is personally kind of coming from an emerging country. I see that definitely as a huge value that basically kind of being disrupted via blockchain, kind of like those type of things. From the fund perspective, we have been kind of trying to understand how this is kind of like create a lot of fundamentally, if you start thinking about wherever you are talking about trust, data, as well as kind of sharing that data, and you need to kind of like have some type of transaction involved. There are a lot of these things that can be disrupted. I think the use case has to make sense. The problem that's happening today, or the biggest challenge, is like everybody is trying to apply, like say like, hey, blockchain is going to solve this problem. I mean, you have to think about fundamentally that there have been multiple like large businesses that have been built, which does not need decentralization. But people are trying to kind of like apply for like blockchain for dating, blockchain for X, which doesn't make any sense in any way. And I think two of the use cases that I'll talk about is like, for example, in an industrial environment where you are trying to basically, as a company, trying to basically sell someone to something where they are operating those particular devices in an environment which is not connected to the internet. smart contracts now basically kind of like allow you to have a business model where you are selling them some type of subscription model where basically if a company does not pay, then after a year, then that device will stop working itself. So I think those type of use cases which companies like Filament are trying to basically build, where you are building those self-governing contracts, or those type of use cases are very, very powerful, where you are going in and solving some specific problems. Now, in other cases where the biggest challenge that I'm thinking about is like everybody's talking about data. Everything is being connected from your home to your car to individuals. So you start talking about the data from home, data from your healthcare providers, data from all different types of things. And when you start thinking about the entire value chain, what is not clear is like who actually owns the data. Like for example, in case of car, like right now, my car is not connected to the internet, and I own all of the data. But now automakers start saying like, hey, I'm selling you the car, and I'm going to start giving you a subscription. Like for example, what Tesla is doing, they are able to push over-the-air updates. It sounds all good, but I mean, on the other hand, they can also stop you from using that car in the way that you want to use. Like for example, they can say like, hey, you can't really use your car as part of a fleet, or you can't drive Uber, or you have to give us a part of that thing if you try to do that. So a lot of these things around like who owns the data and what can you do with the data is still not clear. And now as the data value will become more and more important, people will start to kind of like claim that it's my data. So I think somebody has to step in and say like, hey, the data governance is very, very important, and you have to kind of like figure out who owns the data. I mean, on the internet side, when you kind of like talk about what Facebook and Twitter and all of these companies are doing with the user privacy data, that became very, very, over the past few years, you have seen that play, like how these companies have changed their terms of service of usage of the product over many years. And now they can like own all the consumer data, and people start becoming more and more educated about using ad blockers to prevent these companies to understand how am I browsing on the internet. So I think those will become more and more prominent among consumers also as they get kind of become more educated about these use cases.
Thank you. I think that's actually a really interesting point. So I just want to jump off from what Ashish is discussing. So I think most of us think of IoT as an opportunity to decentralize, right, and have all these devices connected. And people tend to also think about blockchain technology in the same way, right? Information decentralization, right? So to kind of jump up on your data point, would anybody like to kind of address this point in terms of kind of data ownership, or kind of how that works with either public or private blockchains, and the potential kind of challenges, or what areas in which that might be the most applicable?
I think so. We would have a chance to skip big OTT players like Amazon, Facebook, Google right now. So if we pay peer-to-peer, so Apple Pay or Google Pay or Facebook Messenger payment, but the peer-to-peer, so we could skip the OTT players platform. So the other carriers payment installs the blockchain Bitcoin payment solutions in application between memory. And in IoT, I think I have been investigated time stamping DVS delivery versus payments. So still blockchain is time stamping a little bit not precise. And payment process deliveries, there is some argument. But for accelerating the IoT, for example, some customer pay Bitcoin to machines. Machine receives Bitcoin and certified, and instantly the company flies the drone within 5 miles, and payment transaction and action has been done. But to do so, we will solve the time stamping, DBS, or other solutions. Sharing economy, hailing taxi, like. But so some communities, of course, are doing a good job to solve this kind of problems. and I'm very positive. I'm very positive. Skip changed a lot.
You know, I always like to say that everything is okay until someone gets hurt. Right? And I think that, you know, Europe is taking a big step forward in this regard this year, right, in May with the GDPR rules. Right? It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the United States, right? I mean, at the risk of getting political here, right? I think in this country, too often, business interests are able to, you know, get legislation to suit them, right, rather than the people, right? And I think that's the only reason why we don't have similar sort of rules here. But even the project that I did, right, it was a very conscious decision to show as a part of the use case that we demonstrated how that data could be under the control of the user, right? So the idea was, you know, the user could see the data, and that if somebody wants to access that data, right, they have to request it from us, right? And the user can either accept or deny that request. And I think that's the model that we should have, right? The whole idea that all of these devices are going to collect all of this data about us. We won't even know what it is, right? And these other companies can monetize it without sharing any of that. I feel like, look, the only reason why everybody's talking about doing that right now is because no one's gotten hurt yet, right? And then once somebody gets hurt, then I think things will change.
So Orange, being a European or French company, is their official stand is that the data belongs to the user. Orange doesn't monetize on those data. The monetization that can take part is along aggregated data and anonymous data. Orange is also part of a consortium together with MIT that is trying to solve data governance issues and help corporations share data between them while still keeping their own data safe behind their encryption and behind their firewall. When you say until people gets hurt, we all saw last year with the breach of the credit score breach and with Yahoo's I don't know how many accounts that were hacked. So we don't really know the extent of that yet. And I'm sure that I'm sure that some people got hurt, but maybe it's not in the news yet. And so it's really, for me, it's really a question of how can we as in different geographies you have a different approach. Just like you said, in Europe it's one approach, and in the U.S. In China is also a different approach, and in each country is also about who has the stronger lobby. When you look at the U.S. versus Europe, the question is more around how anonymized the data can be, and how we can protect the privacy. There's I don't know, there was an investor, I forget his name, but he said that in the autonomous vehicle part, the importance of data is not the customer privacy, but it's the customer security. So that's why you want to protect data to prevent accidents rather than protect data not to have companies monetize on it.
You know, just to build on that, with the Equifax case, you really remind me, you know, that's kind of like the old world, right? You got this company that holds this super secret information. They build all these walls around it, and it's like this giant honeypot for hackers to go after. And by the way, they also make a ton of profit from having that data and just kind of doling it out to people that pay. And you know, with blockchain and anonymization, you could end up saying, well, you know, here's the data, it's in public. You just don't know who it belongs to, but this is all the data. Equifax in that case would basically go out of business. And because the data is public, there's this need to really increase security, because in general the data is public, you just have to you have to just increase the security, not link it to specific individuals. And I think to me that's also one of the reasons IoT up to this point has kind of been a failure in many ways. I go to a conference every year that says IoT will be here next year.
Next year, guys. Anytime now.
2020.
And why is that? I think everybody is very shy. All the big corporations are very shy to buy into somebody else's platform, right? So of course Microsoft has a platform, and Google has a platform, and Facebook has a platform, Ford has a platform. Everybody kind of says, oh, I want to do my own data, I want to own it, I want to keep it, it's very secure. I think with moving to blockchain, you're going to end up with a lot of that data actually being out in the public domain and being able to be analyzed by a ton of people, and the value, people have always thought the value of this data is so high, but it really isn't. At most, Google makes something like $80 a user per year from the data, and that's like for us most in the first world countries, right? And other users, they make far less money. So the data isn't really that valuable. It is way more valuable when it gets aggregated and put together with a whole bunch of other things.
I think that's a really interesting point. So what would be, if it is very valuable today to hold on to the data, and the ability to exclude other people from your data is also very valuable. What would drive the big corporations to kind of move towards a more decentralized blockchain model? How would they, or startups, make money from a more decentralized blockchain model, especially in IoT space?
I think there should be a value proposition to the consumer, right? Like if you look at companies like 21, they're trying to create a transparency in what the value of the data is, what's being collected, and how that can benefit, the consumer. So like anyone can send me a direct email if they go into 21 Co. It just costs them $1, but that's and it gets to the top of my inbox, and that's this idea of communication that's being made a lot more transparent than previously. And so I think if you define what the value proposition of the connection or of a piece of data or of a contact, like in this case it's my email, and make that very clear, then there's the opportunity for a market clearing transaction to happen.
I don't know, I kind of agree with that as such, because for me to email someone, if I have to pay $1,
Others are more expensive. $1 is the lowest one. Like it's the lowest cost.
No,
higher.
I don't agree with that kind of from that perspective. Like, it does not resonate with me. Like, you can scale that. Like,
but versus LinkedIn, right? That is a model versus what LinkedIn does and how LinkedIn monetizes the data, the connections that it's aggregated. At least in this other model, there's a clear transaction between myself and someone else. Versus LinkedIn, for someone to be premium, or just someone to be paying LinkedIn to get access to messaging and then spam you and spam your LinkedIn inbox that way. It's just one example, one very specific example of the transparency that could result in a more fair transaction.
Right.
The issue is that I'm thinking about that blockchain is going to solve all the problems. It's not. Right? It has its own problems. Right? So you have to understand that these are all the tools that you basically use, and I think it's a much bigger thing that you figure out what is the right answer. Nobody knows the right answer. Everybody's trying different ways. Yes, blockchain solves a lot of the problems for a lot of the things that we have been doing for past 10, 20, 30 years, right? But then it's not going to be like, hey, we're going to use this and it's going to solve all the problems. It's not, right? So still, the fundamental issue with that, the problem that you have with email is that once anybody knows your email, they can just send you as many emails as they want. So the question is once I know your email, now I can keep sending you, and I paid you once.
But you don't know you can't contact me directly. It's through. It's not how it works. Yeah.
No, but the thing is so in that case you're assuming that your email address is private.
It is, yeah.
But finding somebody's email address is so easy. That's what I'm referring to is the use cases that people assume is that blockchain is going to basically solve all the problems. It's not. Yes, it might solve it for some particular use cases,
yeah.
But it can't solve it for all the use cases.
Right.
It is a specific use case.
Yeah, I think we can all agree that it's any new technology, it's going to bring its own problems, and a lot of those problems might not be foreseeable.
I did want to take issue with a couple of things that Jeff said, right? Yeah, I haven't crunched the numbers myself, right? But ultimately, if Google really is making $80 per user off of their data, maybe I'm missing something. That's good money, right? If there's enough users, right, there is money to be made, right? And I think with the anonymization part, it's true that there's a lot of data that maybe people will be willing to share if it's anonymized. But in the context of mobility, let's say if that data includes my location, right? In other words, if you know that, okay, this person is in this location at this particular time, and in this particular location at another time, even if I anonymize that information, it still creates a risk to me, right? In other words, I wouldn't want somebody knowing that information, even if they didn't know it was Alan Gordon who was there at those times.
But Google does know that information.
See?
Google does know that information.
Sure. No, but he was talking about making it public, right? He was talking about having that information be public to where anybody can access it, right? And I was saying that I think there's going to be an issue with that. I think there's a lot of data that what you're saying is true, right? But there's a lot of data for which it's not.
I think it's an interesting discussion because I hear data considers like a commodity, it's like gold. I think the value of data is not really, it's in data itself, but it's what you make out of it. And users typically they do a trade-off. You open a Gmail account because they give you like X gigabytes and it's cool. And the trade-off is each time you go search something, then you're locked. I'm sure all of you, they have a cell phone with geolocation because it's cool. And the trade-off is you accept to give your data. All of you have a credit card. Same. Everybody knows what you're buying. Your bank knows what you're buying. The trade-off is you don't have to have a stack of bills in your pocket. So it's not really the data, the value is what you make out of it. And I'm sure, you have like a volume effect. The more data you have, the more smart things you can do with more data. But I'm pretty sure that Google, with half the data they have, they would still make $80. Because this is what they do, this is the service they make. And this is where I agree with you. I think when you think in terms of blockchain, the main question we have to ask ourselves is, do you really need the blockchain for this? And I'm trying to, it's a new thing, I'm trying to figure out what are the core assets, the core values of blockchain, what are the services. You have immutability of transactions. You put something in the blockchain, it stays forever. There's no, some people say SHIT in, SHIT out for computing. Blockchain is SHIT in, shit in. It stays. So you have to be cautious, basically. One patch. So immutability of transactions. Then you have everything which is decentralization of operations. Easy, open ecosystem, open or closed, depend. Then you have tokenization. Tokenization stands for liquidization. You can take something, this cup, and say, I'm gonna cut it in 1 billion parts, which are tokens. And then suddenly, each one of you can own like 10 of these. Imagine a car that could be shared. That applies something. And the fourth one, which is the most important, and that's basically was created by Ethereum, is self-execution, smart contracts. And this has a huge impact. I think, I don't see it completely, but for everything, for IoT. Because
certainly that has a lot of obvious applications.
Slug.it is actually working on that, having self-governed items. This could be a huge cost saving, but also with a big risk, because if you let them go, but you make sure you control it. So I always use this framework, those 4 values, and I always ask myself, okay, where does blockchain solve the problem here? And really, honestly, 80% of the time, blockchain is not needed.
So what would be an example of that? I think that's a really interesting premise. So if anybody were to respond to see anything that you feel like blockchain is needed to defend the use of blockchain in our blockchain panel.
So, to me, whether it's needed or not, or whether it's real or not, I think that's kind of an inconsequential question. It's sort of like saying, hey, can AI solve this problem or something? Yes, eventually it will. But the question is, how do you get from point A to point B? And to me, the biggest issue right now is the chicken and egg problem, right? We keep talking about, okay, we're going to create this great platform, but somebody kind of needs to make the first move and actually establish that platform. And I'm kind of wondering where that platform is going to come from. Is it a small startup that creates the platform and it just kind of grows organically, or is it like an Apple or somebody that just sets something new in motion?
Well, I would like it to be us. right? When I talk about us, I'm talking about the OEMs, the automakers out there, right? That's the
So
one.
is it like one company, or is it the automotive industry, for
The
example?
automotive industry, or at least several, car makers within that industry.
I mean, you have to measure what is the value you have of owning, like I'm one OEM, I own my platform. What's the value of it versus we own the platform with Ford and maybe Orange and we share it. How much do we want the ecosystem to be open? What volume effects do we have? Things like this. It's not clear at the moment because to measure this value, we need first to say what are going to be the use cases of this. What is going to be this blockchain useful? So I mean, in my work, I'm starting step by step, and I'm working more on the use cases at the moment. You have billions of them, and most of the time you can say, nah, maybe not needed for the blockchain, or vice versa. But ultimately, what you want to have is, what's interesting with the blockchains is it creates huge monetary units, like countries. It's Ethereum is a country, Bitcoin is a country, Monero is a country where you can do whatever you want, nobody knows. Each one of these countries, they own the full value chain, and on these countries you have like those tokens that are created that solve micro problems. What do you want to have? Do you want to own the service, or do you want to own the whole country? And depending on the size of the country, do you want to share it with this guy, these guys? It's all the questions we ask ourselves at the moment. Honestly, I mean, I don't have the answers at the moment.
So part of the problem, what you mentioned, that maybe it will be the automotive industry, or maybe it will just be Ford, or maybe it will just be Orange. So part of this problem is that the Bitcoin, or the underlying technology of blockchain, was created as a trustless system, where it's what you describe is a similar as to having all the banks collude and build their own blockchain, which is private, and then consumers will ask, where is the trust here? Initially I don't trust the banks, I don't trust the system. The system failed me several times. Then you're just introducing another problem that I don't trust, another technology that I don't trust.
It's an interesting discussion. Cryptocurrency, you have a lot of people that say we don't trust the system anymore, we're decentralized. It's basically the position you have. I think you still have a huge amount of people who still trust centralized solutions because it's easier for them, because say, okay, that's why you put your money at the bank.
Is it because it's easier, or because you trust the bank?
Both. I mean, originally banks were big safes, and you were trusting them to protect your assets. So some people from somewhere would steal the bank, rob the bank. But that's originally what banks were for. Like, put it there, and it's safe. So the question of do you want to have private or public blockchain is a big one. I mean, public blockchains are awesome because anybody in the world you can do an ICO or whatever, and everybody can participate. It's highly liquid, everybody can play. This is what we have today, and this is why the market's exploded. If you look at it, everybody was just like, that's awesome. It's VC for the people, for the masses, basically. They put $100 in this and not needed to be accredited. Private blockchains are probably the other part of the iceberg. What I see is they probably are going to be bigger than public ones in the future. When I say private, it doesn't mean it's owned by one or two persons. It's just like to have access to the blockchain, to create a node or to perform operations on them, you basically need the access keys, some code. And I believe that's going to be bigger than public blockchain in the future. When people say 20 trillion, 200 trillion economy blockchains, I believe a significant part of it will be private, not accessible to the public.
Anybody disagree with that notion and think the public blockchain would be the bigger part of this equation? We have some people in the audience. I think maybe we have a few minutes to take a couple of questions.
I think it's a false dichotomy, right? The reason that you want a private blockchain is because you want to either control a currency that's associated with it, or you want to store data in it that you do not want to be public. In the case that you don't want to store data in the blockchain, in the public blockchain, you can always store a link. And you can control access to the data outside of the blockchain. So you can have verifiability and immutability and all these good things, right, in the public blockchain. And have a link to private data, right, that you still control access to. It doesn't mean that somebody's going to be able to go get my bin right, out of the blockchain. It means somebody's going to be able to go and query the blockchain for when that car was purchased, right? It's different.
That's exactly right, and that's essentially how we implemented the project that I worked on, right? It's like the provenance data is in the blockchain, the actual bits themselves are somewhere else.
And so the
my
second-
question would be, is a private blockchain essentially business as usual then? Because, you know, you've got central database servers, you're
It's not private,
Certainly.
it's a public blockchain that sends links to private repositories, and you need the access codes to get it.
So the second point is this notion of ownership, right? That Ford or any association of anybody, right, would come in and own these things is completely antithetical to the design of cryptocurrency. So, I mean, that's the reason that the U.S. is having such an embolism about the inability to track financial transactions. That's the reason that you have such ludicrous things as the FBI proposing an ICO, right? So that they can track financial transactions. They have no visibility into it at all. There is no ownership. Ownership is what you contribute. And so you know, the whole, you know, we're going to divide this up this way or that way. I think that's too a false dichotomy. I don't think you're going to divide anything out. I'd like to see what solution Ford brings to the market, or Mitsubishi brings to the market, or Renault brings to the market. I mean, that's going to be the extent that you own, right? You have a relationship with the consumer, right? That's your ownership, right? But even then, you don't own the consumer, right? And this notion of Tesla could stop my car from working, there's a contract, right, that says that I have a car, and Tesla can't shut off my car, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of these concepts are just outmoded, right? The whole notion of ownership changes dramatically, and it's completely outmoded in that kind of context. The whole notion of somebody reaching into my transaction, I mean, today we have that, right? Google collects data from me at an incredible volume, right? What they do with that data is subject to the terms and conditions of me giving the data to them, which is very one-sided. So to Kong's point about 21, at least the communications within the 21 platform are appropriately monetized, right? You know,
or appropriately as determined by those two participants.
Sure.
Right, democratized within
Yeah.
that group.
You've jointly determined, right? You set your price, and I've said I'm going to pay your price, right, to contact you.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I can't contact you out of channel.
Right, exactly.
It doesn't mean that I can't go Google or, you know, figure out who Kong is outside of, you know, 21. But it means that at least within that platform, you guys have agreed on what your cost is for
Yeah.
interaction, right? And it's a way more democratized solution than, you know, I'm going to Google your address and contact you through a standby. You know?
So what I'm hearing you say is a blockchain model in the future where most of the data is private, that's just really disappointing, right? Like I'm kind of feeling, I would rather see a lot of the public ledgers out there expand.
Actually, no. What I'm saying is that blockchain is a new opportunity. Public blockchains are a new opportunity, and they provide a service that traditionally has been locked away inside of individual companies, right? And the reason that we have inefficiency in markets is because those companies can't agree on how to collaborate, or they don't adequately understand what the cost of operating that solution is, or because they honestly don't even know that they're operating that solution, right? And so this is a new way of thinking about how we share information, and it will be successful. Public blockchain will be successful, but I'm not making a value judgment about what data is stored in the blockchain, right? I think whatever is stored in the blockchain is going to be stored in the blockchain. The concern that I have is that people maintain outmoded notions of ownership, right? And they don't actually think about compartmentalization, what should be private and what shouldn't be. And they wind up creating breaches, right, by publishing stuff into the blockchain that has no purpose of being in the blockchain. And more, that capitalists that are focused on monetizing unidentified assets, right, go and start mining the blockchain to create aggregated data sets that inadvertently target people, right? So, I mean, from that perspective, that's my concern. And then I would like to see business models take advantage of this in a way that doesn't hyper-target consumers, right? And focus on this whole consumer monetization model that we've settled on for the last 20 years.
Just one second. Just turn to the private public. I think you're right. Both will exist, and they are targeted to different things. I think a public blockchain that sends links to private repositories is, by design, not a sexy solution. I think for each use case, it's like everything you said about customer, public blockchains are great because it gives a clear message. It's probably designed to use for everything related to supply chain, to whatever accounting solution, the account of the company, things like this. I still believe that there's going to be a massive amount of private blockchains running. And private doesn't mean not centralized. It could be totally centralized among a limited amount of actors. It's a private circle. It's contrary to public, which is open to everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I hope you haven't gone away from this thinking that, the automakers are proposing to get all of this data in these private blockchains and lock it away and make money off of it. That's not the intent at all. I actually agree with a lot of what you said, right? And this whole idea that there's, public data on the blockchain, right? Because a VIN is essentially public information anyway, right? I mean, you can look at some of these VIN through their windshield, and you can go up to any number of several websites, and you can find out a lot of things about that vehicle, right? That's public information, right? But there's a lot of other information about that vehicle that we can track now that should be locked away. And I actually agree with you. I think it should be under the control of the owner, right? Now, in the United States, right, Ford can access that data, right? And they will, and should, right? There's nothing wrong with being a capitalist, right? There's nothing wrong with trying to make money off of the data, right? If the rules change and Ford doesn't automatically get access to that data, then maybe we make money by, sort of owning the platform, and we get a cut off of each transaction, right? You own the data, you can monetize it, but we should get something, right, for storing all of that data and providing the pipe and the infrastructure. So maybe we just share in that, right? I think that's the model for the future. And I certainly wasn't suggesting the sort of scenario that you were describing.
Yeah. Thank you, and I think that's a kind of very fascinating conversation, and I think we are running into our time, so I want to thank you to all of the panelists and also to Michael Ade over there for his very interesting participation in the conversation, adding a lot. So without further ado, I think I'll introduce Ilana, who is going to lead us in the next part of this discussion.
Yeah, thank you again. I was fascinated, so now I need to start thinking what I want to say. But the next phase is basically, we have a few startups. Some are here, some are all over the globe. Some are more deeper in blockchain already, some are starting to think about it, and I'd love to show you, quick pitches and then have some of your thoughts. So the first one is from Singapore, Celestial, whatever. Let's see them.
Hi, I'm Rohit, and with my co-founder Danesh, we are Celestial. In the next decade, 3 billion people and 50 billion devices will come online. The fastest developing cities in growing countries will have better internet than what we can dream of today. Thousands of satellites will become the backbone of information. Fleets of self-driving cars will use these satellites to maintain traffic flow. Governments will use real-time, high-definition satellite videos to track terrorists and protect with their citizens. Humanity's dream to settle on Mars and mine trillion-dollar asteroids have become a question of when rather than if. The future of Earth lies in space. But how can this future happen when connections in space are worse than a 1990s dial-up? For global high-bandwidth connectivity and satellite communications, 20th century cables and radio waves just don't cut it. We need the speed of fiber optics and the flexibility of radio waves. We need a paradigm shift in communications technology. At Transcelestial, we are reimagining communications for the 21st century. We are creating the first ever space network that uses lasers to transfer data. Our laser technology transfers data 1,000 times faster than radio waves across any distance. 1,000 times faster. This is the fastest, highest capacity, long distance, wireless communication network that's possible. We have a huge vision and a realistic plan. Our 24-month development is staged in 4 phases: ground, to air, to edge of space, to low Earth orbit. Low Earth orbit sounds expensive, right? Wrong. The emergence of nanosatellites has reduced the cost of putting a satellite in space by orders of magnitude. We use these nanosatellites instead of big, expensive ones. For our current land prototypes, we are negotiating trials with 2 of Singapore's leading communication companies and one of Europe's most advanced data centers. In the pipeline for subsequent phases are leading aerospace, financial, and telecommunication companies. Developing this requires a fundamental knowledge of light and low latency networks. My co-founder Danesh has a PhD in nanophotonics from NUS. He has designed and built photonic systems for A-Star, Sumitomo Electric Labs, and the Funsum Institute. He has published 10 papers in top photonics journals, including Nature. I have a degree in electrical and electronics engineering from NTU. I've worked at the Royal Bank of Scotland's FX electronic markets team on low latency and highly scalable software systems. Our world-class advisors include a NASA scientist who has worked on the Mars rover and the Hubble program, a leading name in photonics research in Singapore, and a space industry expert with more than a decade of experience. In the future, all high bandwidth and low latency communications will get routed by our space laser network. Transcelestial will be the last communications network that humanity will ever need.
Okay, so not quite blockchain, but sort of interesting. So what's your thoughts? Would you invest?
I would have to understand, for me, I would have to understand the physics more and drill into the technology. They don't lack for vision, I'll give them that. But to be honest, I'm a little skeptical. Right? It's almost as if when you sketch a vision that broad.
And they actually do it.
Yeah. That's just me.
I mean, they talked about a whole bunch of different things, right? And like for a startup to kind of like, I get scared when I see like somebody trying to do so many things at the same time. So the idea is sort of like how, kind of like, what's your plan one? Like, what are you going to achieve first, right? And what is the core technology or product that you're building? And there's like, and they didn't talk about a whole lot of other things like regulations and the speed and a whole bunch of other stuff that they skipped, which I know that it's not possible to talk about in a 4-minute conversation, but still kind of like talking about grand vision. I mean, the only thing they were selling is like in the entire pitch was like the grand vision of like what we can do and who we are. They seem to have a good credentials, but it's not feasible to understand what they have achieved so far.
Right, but you might ask them for a meeting, which is already interesting.
So I'd say more of a TED Talk than a,
Yeah.
some sort of traction needs to be shown.
That's
Prototype, the government contract,
What they're
somebody.
thinking or
Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me of, so Elon Musk, he did his thesis and his master's on a laser station in space that will provide energy to Earth. So it's kind of it's a similar
Similar,
concept.
Okay, thank you guys. Let's do another remote and then we'll have somebody on site. Chronicled, it's a short one. Let's see it quick.
Nowadays, big businesses have a huge problem with their supply chains.
Maybe it's not. What happened? Sorry.
Too much on manual tasks, creating fragmented, untrustworthy data and human errors which can cost a company millions. The current infrastructure lacks accountability and traceability because it just assumes the party in the supply chain one step up has done their duties correctly. This can have grave consequences in industries such as pharmaceuticals or food safety, where consumer safety is on the line. That's where blockchain comes in. A blockchain is a decentralized digital ledger that allows you to track data in a way that is secure, immutable, and tamper-proof. When combined with IoT devices, unique identifiers, and sensors, blockchains can create a trusted link between a physical object and its digital record, making it easy to verify the source, various checkpoints in the chain, and even identify the sources of error in the supply chain. In industries such as pharmaceuticals, precious metals, high-value commodities, and consumer products, it takes one incident to cost a company millions, damage a brand's reputation, or harm or injure customers. With supply chains getting more and more complex, now is the time to safeguard your supply chain using blockchain.
What do you think?
There are several players that are engaging in this space and are doing this. I always want to see in this specific thing.
No, sorry.
This is Carmen. She's
We
the
don't want
enterprise.
Carmen, sorry.
So on these, in this use case, which is, I wouldn't say a proven use case, but it's definitely it's a known use case. I would like to see traction. I would like to see who they're working with. We at Orange Silicon Valley, we've worked with on a project with both a pharmaceutical and a food manufacturer, or a grower rather. It's not easy to work with those companies. It's not easy to for those companies to innovate and use these new technologies.
Yeah, that's. I was just going to build on that. You know, I think for any of these companies going into these industries, half the challenge is going to be not the blockchain technology, but at least half the challenge is just understanding the business, understanding who to sell to. So that's what you want to see in an investor pitch is, hey, I don't just have some cool new technology, but actually I'm already working with these 4 hospitals,
Right.
and here's what we're learning, and they're so excited. They have letters of intent, blah, 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 right? So this one got my attention, but there's a missing piece.
I agree.
The entire pitch talks about what is blockchain, what is IoT, what is supply chain, but what exactly do they do?
What do they do?
Right, I mean, and they just like in the end they say we are this company. I'm like,
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
This is a good textbook
Yeah.
for IoT and blockchain. But the point is, big enterprise has already their own proprietary systems. So what about the integration?
What can you do and what can you do?
This kind of system?
Thank you very much. So now we have a very interesting company, IoT Cloud. Gabriela Silajova flew all the way here to tell us about it. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. We are based in the UK, so thank you very much for the opportunity to be here with this wonderful panel. I flew overnight from London because I thought it worth for me to talk about the company rather than sending the video. So I'm a founder of IoT Cloud, a young, ambitious company that is creating a new market category of ultimate edge computing in motorsport. We are focused on software and data services for Formula One, Le Mans and Formula E. Formula One is about racing on the limit, and in this always-on world, something happens every 5 milliseconds that you need to react to, otherwise the race is lost. So it's clear that it's massively data-rich environment, and without real-time insight, you would just go for 2 laps and then stop and break down. Fortunately, it is also a sport that is absolutely unique in the level of technology that can be applied. And the edge-based technology that we are developing, basically, if you imagine that all 400 sensors on the board of F1 could make dynamic decisions rather than sending raw data off the board of the car for a human or automated intervention. And the technology, edge-based technology that we are developing can do exactly that, essentially becoming the central brain of the car. It's a self-improving intelligent system that allows you basically to anticipate what events may come up during the race and prepare for them beforehand. We call it instantaneous reality bridging because it has an enormous capacity to net everything from driver and car performance to the way teams communicate and execute race strategy. So, but our model is also offering the opportunity for other mission-critical applications to rise, like high-frequency trading or quantum computing, where the thin cloud platform doesn't really suit because of the risks of interruptions. So the edge computing will grow exponentially in the global motorsport market that is now worth 26 billion, and with growing popularity of Formula One, it's going to reach a revenue of 34 billion in only 3 years. So we think that the time to pay attention to it is right now. And we are not just those who predict, we are those who actually deliver what they predict. We are a team of 3 engineers and have experience working alongside McLaren, and one of the most successful teams in the history of racing. McLaren, Brabham, we worked together with Ferrari in the past, and at the moment we are seeking corporate clients or go-to-market partners with follow-up funding. That's it, basically.
Can we ask a question? So I know that some are Formula One fan, right? So, and I know that a lot of the teams are already quite sophisticated, right, regarding their telemetry and so forth. So is it that you're offering a sort of packaged offering so that they don't have to do it themselves? Is that really the value add here?
The value add here is improving communications speed that affects, at the end of the day, it affects performance and reliability. that are crucial for successful races.
But the point I'm saying is that they're doing that, right? I know a lot of the teams are
They're
very,
not
very sophisticated.
They're not doing that because they have a different model they use,
Yeah.
which is not sufficient to host the latencies that are necessary to provide this kind of communication.
And what?
This is a bit related to the IP, so I'm really happy to go over that on the
And why limit
one-to-one.
yourself, I mean, obviously I'm from Ford, right? Why limit yourself to Formula One, right? I mean, it's a
No,
tiny,
it's a-
it's a tiny market, right? And if what you do is great in terms of predictive maintenance and so forth, there's a whole world out there that's much bigger.
No, we don't limit. I said motorsport market,
Yeah.
which includes Formula One, Le Mans,
Okay.
about 60 teams, and each team invests about 600 millions in R&D,
Yeah.
and then it's Formula E as well.
No, but I'm talking about just cars in general. In other words, why limit yourself to just that?
What's the difference?
Yeah.
What's the difference between the
Yeah,
analytics
yeah.
that you're giving them versus something that any car?
Yeah, that's a good question actually. What I also mentioned is that it's suitable for other mission critical, because it's mission critical applications like the high frequency trading or quantum computing. Because the added value is in the way the model is engineered and the upsides that is built in. So there's no downside.
Is this a software only solution or is it a?
No.
So
It's
it
the whole
includes
model
hardware?
includes, yeah, both.
That's the answer to your
Yeah.
question.
And if we invested, would we get to go to the races?
Yeah.
My answer.
Definitely.
So you already have
Just
one
have Ford
conversation that.
sponsor it.
I have one question. Motorsports in cars, it's a difficult market because it's what we do. We spend a lot of money in motorsports, millions, billions, and what we get from motorsports is mostly communication and sometimes technology breakthrough that we put in the cars. So we like to win and everything. It's good for communication, but what we envision is what are the benefits of motorsports in the near future. It's more of an investment. So my question is going to be very simple. Can your system work on something else than engine, suspension, and everything typically? And
It can
like
work.
any sensor, lidar, stuff like this. That like imagine a self-driving car with a big amount of data.
It can work on the car itself, anywhere on the car. It can work outside the car. It's applicable to the whole motorsport business. And it improves in targets better communication, better collaboration during the races. And we are targeting, as I said, we are trying to improve performance and reliability, which are crucial for safe and successful races. It attracts much more audience and younger audience, which is a good proposition.
You're considering our car OEM might be your partner.
Sorry?
You guess your partner might be a car OEM, but most of the car OEM have a big attention for getting into EV in the future.
Oh yeah,
Yes,
of
a
course.
lot of the resources getting into EV. How do you think about the future? Your role?
Definitely, the Formula One is very interesting in terms of there are other problems like lifetime of the batteries. Yeah. The Formula One is not the most, it's not the fastest car ever, but there are some limitations in terms of lifetime of the battery. We are trying to address this through this model as well.
And your solution so it's a hybrid solution. Is it?
It's a combination. Of
When you talk about communication, you mean the communication inside the vehicle, or the communication from outside to into the vehicle?
Inside, both inside and outside as well. It's the intellectual property of the model, as I said. It's better if we talk about.
No, sounds good. I mean, you guys know each other now, and you have some fans here. So
thank you.
I just want to share a quick note with you guys regarding Gabriela. So you may want to know what we do. We are basically an incubator, unique incubator. We are the only incubator in Silicon Valley which have access to engineers, software, hardware. So basically what we do, very simple. 90% of startups fail because not of funding, but because of lack of product development, market fit, or customer acquisition. We're the only one who focus on these two. So the customer acquisition comes primarily through Fortune 500 partner and customer. We have slightly over 300 Fortune 500 relationships, from Google to SoftBank, all the way to across the globe, Tencent, etc. The second side is, on a development side, we use almost a model like Apple versus Foxconn. So we have access to over 45,000 engineers through private label companies, software, hardware, we can do anything. And given the sheer of the volume, we also have several thousand around the globe. Fast forward, obviously we also startups, so things scramble last minute. So we invited several hundred startups to this event. I think we have about almost 200 between the one pitching and the demo yesterday. But the point of the story is this. Some, they get lost in translation because when you send our email, it's crumbling, but you're very specific. First, last name, you've been confirmed, show up here, to pitch, here's how you pitch. About 40%, they act on it. Gabriela is one of them. So she's in UK, she received an email 2 days ago, she sent us for a question, nobody replied to us because it's crumbling 1,000 email, get the ticket, fly. Someone here getting lost in translation, what building? I'm here at the wrong building. Even the location is clearly stated on event. And the takeaway is if you're an entrepreneur, and that's the takeaway for Gabriela, plus there are several use cases. You have people come from Japan, China, the guy came from China yesterday, Europe, the guy flew in the middle of the night from New York, across the globe. Takeaway is, as an entrepreneur, be always part of the solution, not part of the problem, because startup is 100% problem. And as you propel yourself, it's really easy for anyone to push you forward. But if you're getting lost in translation, watch that movie. So another upload to Gabriela.
Let's call a few that are here on site. Do we have Kitty Lasso? I don't know if you see. I'm not sure. I'm sorry. Music lifeboat? Yeah, right. Come on over.
Good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing? My name is Brandon Bernstein. I did my doctorate in music education from USC, and I graduated in 2008. I've been a university professor for over 10 years. I'm here representing a company. I founded a company in 2015 called Music Lifeboat. We're working on trying to make music education more accessible. Currently, there's a huge problem throughout the nation and the world that there's a gutting of music education that is taking place. Schools are cutting significantly. I think in Philadelphia, I read a stat a few years ago, it was like 99% of all the schools, the public schools, have cut music education. Even with doing my doctorate in music education, I never realized, and I'll give you a brief background, I was a jazz guitar player. I only focused on really practicing like 8 hours, 10 hours a day for most of my life, and got through school and became a professor. But I was never aware of the benefits that music education offers, especially for whether you're a professional musician, but especially if you're not. And with the gutting of music education and the problems that this being a huge problem that's happening, we wanted to work on a solution. So in 2015, we released an app called Bandblast. And Bandblast has 350 lessons by LA Phil musicians. We have character-based games that teach pitch, rhythm, ear training, and we self-funded it. We, in 2.5 years, we've now got over 1.4 million users with $0 spent in marketing. We have over 50 school districts, just by looking on Google searches alone, that use it as their main music resource. We've gotten a lot of achievements, a lot of awards. There's been Stanford is named as one of the expert app picks 2 years in a row. We have over 100 education and ed tech companies and blogs that name us as a top 20 educational tool. And last week CNN said that we're one of the top 10 educational resources that's fostering creativity in children and students. The market for arts education, music education, right now is booming, and I think we're well ahead of the game. We have the best, in my opinion, the best lessons with LA film musicians, following a curriculum that repeats every year with first-year band and orchestra. This is recycled. We know from the band teachers and the students, this isn't something that's not been tested. It's been out for 2.5 years. It's got all 5-star reviews. The awards, we know that it significantly is boosting engagement. Just like STEM has been a big movement, STEAM, I think there's a lot of neuroscience research that's showing just how the value of arts education, fostering creativity, brain development, cognitive skills, leadership skills, confidence. And this is significantly or exponentially greater with underserved communities. Also, with the ed tech market, I believe in 2017 it was more than $19 billion. More than 1/3 of all the revenue generated from iOS App Store is from educational games. And so I think we have a product that's much needed. We're at the right time at the right place. Our team is basically it's 2 people. It's been myself, and we've had many volunteers. We had 600 people work on this project and generously help us. But as far as team members, it's myself and someone named Julius Priete. He's the vice president of Fox Animation and one of the head people at The Simpsons. And we're currently here seeking corporate partnership advice. It's been an incredible learning process, going from being a jazz musician and educators. We're figuring out what the difference is between an LLC and a social purpose corporation or a C Corp. So it's been fascinating, an incredible journey. But I know we have something that offers a lot of value. And as far as funding, looking for $500,000 to help with adding more key members, more key team members. We're looking to have research and development, marketing, and then just operational costs. So far, the product's completely built and it's been self-funded. There's no debt. Thank you.
Have you pursued any kind of crowdfunding model around this?
We did at the beginning, overly ambitious. I think we set up like $1 million Indiegogo. I think we raised $3,000 at first, which we're very grateful for, but we haven't done anything since. So that's something definitely we should explore.
So with your success, right now that you have some success, maybe doing another round of crowdfunding might be a way to get not only a larger user base, but also get better participation in that kind of round.
Absolutely. It's definitely something we need to explore and get as many brilliant minds involved to help us brainstorm on how best to do that.
Have you ever reached out to like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in Seattle, or any of the philanthropic kind of consortia around Seattle?
I have. not so much lately, more in the first year. But it's, I guess we'll continue to do that. I think that's something that's really great with the team and the volunteers that work. Is just kind of a tenacity that sometimes it seems like there's no traction or anything, and then you just, because you're passionate about the cause, you can, I'm a big believer that a lot of times what seems to be the biggest obstacles or challenges often lead to greater innovations. So it's about reframing the mind, making a personal gain to do that. So I think that's a great, what you're saying right now is something we should absolutely do right away. Cool. Thank you.
What's the revenue model?
So BandBlast is completely free. It's no ads, no data collection. We did that so that we cut the red tape to get into school districts. The model we're going to use to be sustainable is following, there's a company in Los Angeles called CodeSpark. They have a computer science app for children called Foods. And it's someone's, I'm using them because it was a similar model where they were free for 3 years. But what they did is they made their application free for schools and nonprofits, and then now they have a subscription model for ads for students. And it's worked really well. It started with a $25,000 budget, and now we're over $30 million. It's, I think this, for us, it's the closest model I can see with what we have. And, it makes sense. We want to make sure that people have access, and it cuts the red tape to get into the schools.
What education resources are you providing? Apps or instruments or masterpiece or what kind of?
So,
what instructor or teacher?
So I mentioned I was a professor to do this venture. The immediate thing is in our app we have 13 different instruments from it's Philharmonic musicians, and they teach the first year curriculum. We have our games that are very character based. Our IP is very unique. It was very strategically designed, like Tim Burton or The Simpsons or Dr. Seuss. But we found, so we created games that go along with the first year curriculum to help students and engage with learning.
The target are elementary school students.
Yes, the target is first year.
Yes.
So I'd say you fit the profile pretty well for an angel investment. Sometimes angels also, they don't just invest in companies that go IPO and try to get a lot of venture money as subsequent rounds. Sometimes angels just invest in getting a smaller business over the hump to be self-sufficient, and I think you fit that profile pretty well. So I'd like to get your pitch deck at some point.
Okay, absolutely.
All right.
Other thing is kind of like, also think about it from the distribution perspective. If somebody already has distribution, they might put it in, and they are looking for some type of content. So on that side, it can be very interesting for you to kind of like go and use their distribution channel. Like for example, if it's a browser, it's kind of like like a device maker, like Samsung or somebody else, and like who's looking for some type of content. And another thing you can also think about is like in international markets, like maybe you can like take your content and see if you can convert into any other language. Like because then like online education is extremely like really big in like emerging countries like China and India. So like think about those perspective, like if you take what you have already, because the content is already there, and you need to figure out some type of distribution partnerships and figure out something of that sort. And that can help you go from like 1.4 million to like 14 million just from a partnership perspective.
Thank you. We actually have a grant that we've not been able to use for. I think it's about $10,000 for us to implement, but we have a grant to have everything translated into 13 languages. So all our 350 videos that cover the first year curriculum will be translated. We have put up an Apple for that too, and then your other points are well taken. Something to explore. I would love to speak with you later. Just send an email. Just anybody in the room just has advice or. You can always learn so much from everybody. So, but thank you for that.
What's your email?
My email is Brandon BRAND.
Sorry, given time, you share that offline because we have several startups.
Okay. Sorry about that. Thank you guys.
Do we have Vico here? Did they make it? Hey, cool. Familiar.
Hello everybody, my name is Emilio and I'm gonna keep it shortly because lunch is already served behind you guys. Okay, so my name is Emilio and I'm one of the co-founders at Vico. In Vico we strongly believe that cycling and active transportation helps improve quality of life in cities by addressing three of the most important challenges that cities face. The first one, environment and air quality. The second one, traffic and congestion and mobility. And the third one, people's health. What we do at Vico, it's pretty simple. It's a mobile application available for download for free in iOS and Android that rewards people for urban biking around their cities. So how does it work? Pretty simple. You download your app, it's GPS technology based, so you hop on your bicycle, you press start, then you go to your destination, and it records the kilometers that you've traveled on your bicycle or using active transportation, skating, walking, whatever. For every kilometer that you travel, we grant you a digital currency, a global digital currency that can be earned anywhere around the globe nowadays. And then you can exchange it and redeem it in one of our over 500 partner shops that are offering rewards, discounts, freebies, products, and their services in exchange for your kilometers traveled through physical activity. We established this company 2 years ago in 2015 in Bogotá, Colombia. We got popular really fast. The media covered our story pretty quick, and we expanded to every major city of Colombia. We're now live in the 5 principal cities of Colombia. The year after, we went internationally to Mexico City, where it's one of the cities that faces the 3 challenges very drastically. So we were very well received. And last year we incursioned in a much more developed market in Canada. We went live in Vancouver and in Toronto. We have now collected over 300,000 users, registered users that are using our app among all the markets that I just mentioned, that have collectively recorded over 30 million bikes. That means that they have traveled over 30 million kilometers by bicycle or walking. And that has at the same time represented savings on CO2 emissions not emitted to the environment of over 3,500 tons. So we're changing and generating impact little by little in the world. Right now our team is 12 people. Myself, I'm one of the co-founders. My background comes from communications and public relations. I used to work in an Omnicom agency for 10 years, managing big clients for the Latin American market. My co-founder, Enrique, who's not here today, is an engineer and he did his master's on business in Australia, and then he had the opportunity of participating on a startup in Copenhagen, Denmark, where he understood much better the cycling ecosystem. Myself, I come from the business and administration professional industry, and I'm a huge cyclist. Since I was very little, I competed professionally and I became first in my country, participating in world championships. We believe that the disruption of the cycling ecosystem is happening right now all around the globe. I think you guys in the automotive industry understand it pretty well. One of the main reasons for it is sponsoring the bike sharing system of San Francisco. And there are more billions of dollars that have been invested in all these bike sharing companies. So we believe that the future of walking is going to be cycling. Everybody is going to be a potential cycling because we're going to have bicycles available for everybody. We're looking for corporate partners to understand better how we can expand exponentially. We're looking for investment as well, and also for advice on how cryptocurrency can play a huge role on our startups, since we already have that digital coin that it's being accepted by partners and used by most of our users. Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk to you, and so the one advice I was going to give you is make sure you talk to automakers, right? Because remember, the automakers, nobody calls themselves an automaker anymore, right? We're all mobility companies. Right?
I was last week in Munich in a conference talking with the big Volkswagen group, with BMW, all of those.
Yeah, but I want to chat with you.
Definitely want to talk to you.
Are you selling your carbon offsets?
Not yet, but that's one of the monetization models we want to explore.
35,000 tons is $1.4 million.
You want to buy it?
I'll buy it.
I definitely want to talk to you.
Yeah, I met them in Singularity. I thought they had something pretty cool that should be
We're
here.
part of the Singularity University Venture Program. Thank you very much.
Yeah, well done. And I know we're a little late, so Ram, are you here? Coming over. We'll do a little swap. Let me see. Meanwhile, do I have Silicon Energy here in the room? I do have. Okay. And then Titus Khan? We do have him. Okay. So worst case, we'll swap you to. Are you going to be here for a second? Okay. So what worst case, maybe we'll swap you to the other section. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you all. My name is Ron Maurer and I work with SyncFab. We're revolutionizing manufacturing supply chain through blockchain application. Really happy to be here today. It's a very important time for our company. We are in the process of our public token offering. We've raised almost 15,000 ETH and almost at our soft cap. We're looking to get to our hard cap of 33,000 ETH. And we've been in business since 2013 in supply chain manufacturing and developed relationships with over 75 CNC manufacturers in California, which has been our focus, as that's the largest vertical, as you a lot of our makers know, and it's growing. We feel that blockchain is a natural application that will really augment what we're doing and allow for decentralized buyer to manufacturer platform that we've created, eliminating intermediaries and utilizing smart contracts to streamline procurement processes, eliminating wasted labor hours and miscommunication that leads to manufacturing mistakes and delays. It's very, very hard for smaller manufacturers, designers to get their products out on the market. We all know that, let's say the first car was an electric car, but we've had to wait for a billionaire with balls to risk his whole fortune to create an electric vehicle, and he's still having problems with his supply chain. So this is a major problem for the future of the world. If we want to see innovative products out on the market, we need to make the manufacturing process easier. IoT is going to be a huge part of that as we're able to create more efficient processes, and I think you're all aware of what that's going to do, allowing the manufacturers to take the data and the buyers to speak directly to each other. We created the MFG token, which is using as a utility token, and we're using it to incentivize purchasers and the manufacturers. So the benefits, for example, are initially that it's very hard for any new designer or manufacturer to get a quote from someone. Basically, you have a number of problems that will happen. Either they string you along, they never respond to you, they steal your IP. So you can't base a business around that, and you basically either end up selling your design to someone that can either shelve your design or change it and never pay you royalties. These are the major problems that's been happening in manufacturing for a long time. And the amazing thing about blockchain is that we can solve a number of those problems through this decentralized ledger. I won't go too far into that, but basically from the first part with the token, we incentivize manufacturers to give a quote. So that is the basis for getting your product off the ground. And then along the chain, on-demand purchasing, tracking, reordering, connecting with local network of vetted manufacturers, secure transaction connections through smart contracts. For the manufacturers, we're eliminating marketing costs by having buyers directly connect with manufacturing facility, guaranteed payments through smart contracts, complete control of pricing and capabilities, and less headaches and overall processes to focus on producing the best quality products. So essentially, one of the main things that we're doing is incentivizing local manufacturing, as that's the best way to produce any product that you want on the local market is to produce it locally. You have the best quality. There's been a lot of disenfranchising of manufacturers in all the trade agreements, and they're feeling left behind by technology. And so this is an opportunity to incentivize them to come into the future with IoT through the token so that they become part of this process that's necessary for the future of our world. I think that's the bottom line, guys. Thank you so much. So you're raising money? Yes, currently. Yes, the token offering is live right now.
I don't want to buy any tokens.
Well, we can talk outside of equity, or I'm personally not, but I'm just in community outreach. Yes. We're happy to connect you with our CEO.
Just one question to better understand. What is your typical client or user of would be his customer journey? Just to give an example, I understand it's probably small businesses.
Yeah, so because we've been in business since 2013, we've had a number of products that we've run through our platform, and this is the version 1 platform, pre-blockchain platform. So now we've kind of stopped that process, and we're raising money to implement the blockchain. Obviously, there's a lot of development that has to happen. It's a process, and also understanding the way IoT is going to work is something that's needs a lot of development for the future. But for example, we had a local company here in the Bay that is a coffee company, and they wanted to create a filter, a proprietary filter for their coffee, and they had no idea how to do it. So they came to us. We took their designs. We had our vetted manufacturer, and we were able to come to produce something for them, and they're a successful company, and they love the product that we've created for them. So it's a perfect example of that.
So how does it work? So how do you incentive? I understand the token is kind of an incentive for them to use your services to make sure they do the things right, the blueprints and everything. So I'm this filter company. How does it go? For example, just if you can say like 30, 40 seconds.
I'm sorry.
I'm the filter company.
Yeah.
How do I interact with you and with the token, just to understand a bit?
Well, I mean, they didn't do that in this case, so that was a pre-token position. But let's say, okay, so they would purchase the tokens, and then they want to go to get a quote. So they offer the token to the manufacturers in order to get a quote. So that's like one way, and the manufacturer then, because they're part of this vetted community, they're incentivized to offer the quote so that the people can then go ahead and decide which manufacturer to go with. Otherwise, there's no incentive for these manufacturers to give a quote, really, and that's why they're very slow to respond or never respond and treat people badly.
Just one last, do you have an idea of what's the current turnover of revenue of your own company?
I don't. I would say that we're in a development process, so a lot of changes are happening. But there's a lot of speculation as to what the amount of money that local manufacturing, U.S. manufacturing, and IoT will bring. I think upwards of $15 trillion by 2020 is so there's, and that's I think something like 27% of that is manufacturing. So there's a lot of room, and we
are the first people to be doing it and with experience in the world. So, thank you. Thank you.
I think everybody is tired and hungry. There are a few more startups. We'll move you to the next session, if that's okay with you. That's okay. I want to thank the panelists. Thanks for all the great conversation, great feedback to the companies. Thank you, companies. Thank you, audience. Have fun eating. We will come back at 1:45. We'll see you back. Bye.